All right, boys, let's rank every aerial motocross track from this season, the 2024 season to be exact. All right, and we're gonna start here with Paula. This was round one. This was our first impressions of the motocross season. And I gotta say, I think they absolutely nailed this track. I think that this is probably one of the more underrated tracks in the series. The ruts are like perfect in my opinion. I think that as you'll see in some of the later rounds, the roughness and the ruts gets a little bit different, and I think that this was perfect. This was one of my favorite tracks. The only downside to this track is that it's Paula, and Paula's pretty mid. You know, just as a layout in itself, it doesn't give me a lot from, you know, the track itself. So I'm gonna put this one at a 9. I know that that might surprise some people, but I think that was insane. But I think this deserves a 9. It's a very good track. But let's move on to round 2. Okay, Hangtown. If you guys know me, you know I love Hangtown. I freaking love Hangtown. I grew up about 10 minutes from Hangtown. I broke my back at Hangtown IRL. I think Hangtown works really, really well in bikes. And this track is no exception, in my opinion. I love this track. There's a problem, I think, which, I don't know. I'm thinking about, I have my ratings over here, and I'm thinking about changing it up a little bit, though, because I'm going to go off scriptical here. I was originally going to rate this track an 8.7 because it's very one-lined, I guess. It feels one-lined in the racing. But just watching this back, I think I have more fun playing this track than I do at Paula because of just the layout. Personally, I'm gonna put Hangtown at a 9.1. All right, gentlemen. Now, we're gonna move on to round 3. Okay. If you guys have been in the MX bike scene for a little while, you guys know that Colorado or Thunder Valley is notoriously like one of the worst tracks in MX bikes because the layout just hates Poboso's physics. So going into this round, I was really nervous that this track was not going to be great. And I have to say, visually, this track is like a step above the first 2 rounds. And they pulled off making one of my favorite tracks of the year just somehow on Thunder Valley. So I'm going to give Thunder Valley an 8.7. There are still some times when Thunder Valleys, and it just doesn't work as well as I would like it to with the game. But hands down, the best Thunder Valley to ever exist in MX bikes. I mean, and it's literally not even close. Yeah, and I love it. Visually, this might be one of my favorite looking tracks as well, with the mountains in the background, all the green, you know what I'm saying? Just very, very good. Now, round 4, Mount Morris. Case is my hometown track, even though it's like 5 hours away from me. This track was very difficult. I remember when this track came out, this was like a step up in difficulty. I mean, Thunder Valley was hard, but when we got this one, the ruts, we were all tripping, all right? But again, man, this track is good, okay? Round 4, this track is so good. I love the layout. I do think for like the average player, this track's probably going to be pretty difficult, all right? So I'm going to give this one an 8.6. Again, visually, just like, beautiful. 8.6, a little bit below Thunder Valley. Oh, man, I'm struggling with that because I don't really know. I'm going to stick with it. I do think Thunder Valley should get that extra spot simply because they broke the trend of Thunder Valleys being absolutely dog water. All right. And speaking of dog water, I'm not talking about the track. I'm talking about my performance in sand. All right. This is Southwick. I am absolutely horrible in sand, as you watch this lap, and you'll be wondering, Doc, I thought you were good at the game. I'm not good on sand. I do really like Southwick, and again, I think this is probably the best Southwick that's ever existed in the game. One of the best sand tracks that's ever existed in the game. It's incredible. I don't like sand, okay? It's because I'm bad. I'm gonna give Southwick a 7. I know that's gonna be like, people are gonna be tight about that. I'm not, it's a skill issue, all right? It's a skill issue on my end. Just let it happen. Okay, next, we have Redbud Buchanan, okay? This is an interesting one. This is probably one of the most anticipated tracks of the year, and a track that notoriously, unlike Thunder Valley, has done incredibly well in MX bikes. Some of the most popular tracks throughout the history of MX bikes have always been Redbud. The layout works really well. It's fast. It's kind of technical. It's got the Roccos. It's always really, really fun. This one, the ruts, I think we went a little too far on some of the ruts, and the steepness of these ruts, as you can see, as I popped out right there. If this track was built like Paula with those style of like rounded ruts, I think that this probably would have been like a 10 out of 10. And maybe I'm just yapping and I don't know anything. Stoney, you can correct me if I'm wrong on the height map, but it just feels like this track, the ruts were a lot more steep, and you pop out of them a lot. And I think that that is gonna lower this one for me. And that is, I'm gonna give this one a 7.5. All right. Now, after, I didn't race this round either, so that could be a little bit, but you know, okay, let's move on to Millville. All right, round 7. This track's incredible. Okay, simply put, incredible. I think, and maybe it's all placebo, but this track, the way he built the ruts and the way he built the bumps, it feels very similar to round 1, which, as I've already said, was kind of my favorite round how we built it. But Millville is just a goated layout. This is probably, it's really hard. I don't want to put like a favorite on it, but I do think this is probably my favorite track of the year. The sand section is really good. It's really difficult. The rough stuff is really challenging, but also still like really rewarding and really doable. The hills, Mount Martin is like super gnarly, but you can also get down it pretty easy and you can send it. It's really fun. I really like the line sections. The ruts seem to hold you really well without trying to just like yeet you out of the rut. This section, like you can turn into the rut. That inside rut's really satisfying. This track just feels really good to play, and I'm gonna give it a 9.5, gentlemen. Yes, sir, 9.5. Immediately after Millville, we moved on to another banger, Washougal. Okay, Washougal, the notorious track for turning your shadows off. I'll be honest, in the past, I have not liked many of the Washougals in the game, other than Washington, hee hee ha ha. And I was very, again, pleasantly surprised by this track. It's really hard. I honestly think this is one of the harder tracks. It's not like the roughest track, but I think it's hard throughout the whole track, where some of the other tracks are just hard in Sector 1 or Sector 2, where there is a difficult part in Sector 1, Sector 2, and Sector 3 on Washougal, and they kind of make or break times. This is the track that I hot lap the most, hands down hot lap the most throughout the year, because I was trying to catch the guys that were running some insane laps on a 250. Never did, by the way, because I'm mid. But this is probably my favorite track. It races well. I didn't qualify because I did a 125 and my settings were messed up. But it races well, and it's really fun to hot lap, and I really do enjoy hot lapping things. Plus, this S section is incredible. So I'm going to give Washougal a 9.3. After Washougal, we moved on to yet another extremely anticipated track of the year. Unadilla, like Redbud, has done nothing but produce bangers in the MX Bikes community. Kel's Unadilla, there was the aerial Unadillas that have always been really, really popular. I think, okay, hear me out. This is probably, there's an asterisk next to this. This is probably my favorite track. I know that I said that Millville was my favorite track, but this is probably my favorite track. But there's one like major issue for me that holds it back. The timing gates are kind of broken, and it is really difficult for you to get a clean lap and have your lap count. They're really, really strict on this track, and I think that there's some spots that like the track kind of shoots you off and your lap won't count. My point in that is, like I said, I really enjoy hot lapping, and I don't like to hot lap this track because it's really aggravating that like only like 40% of my laps count. I know, Doc, just stay on the track, but if you played this track, you understand that there are times when like you're just kind of gonna go off for a little bit. Other than that, I absolutely adore this track. Screw You is amazing as well. But I would give Unadilla a 9.6, but I'm gonna give it -1 because of the timing issue. So it's an 8.6. Now, this is another track I did not race. This is my actual hometown track. It's very close to me. This is Buddy Creek. Not Muddy Creek, Buddy Creek. It's Bud's Creek. And this track, I think, similar to Buchanan or Redbud, the ruts are quite jagged for me, and I found myself popping out of them. There's a lot of ruts really close together. And maybe, like, again, maybe I'm just crazy, but I just feel like the ruts are way steeper on some of these more, like the East Coast tracks are way deeper, way steep. And it does make racing a little bit challenging, because when people crash in front of you, and this is something we'll talk about in Ironman as well, when people crash in front of you in a race, there's nowhere for you to go. You can't get out of the rut easy. You're just locked into the rut. And even if you try to turn out of it, you end up just crashing because the game doesn't like that you're trying to turn out of the rut. So I'm going to give Bud's Creek an 8, probably because I don't have a ton of time on it, and I didn't get to race it because I was away. So we'll go with an 8. It is a good track. It's just not my favorite. And last but not least, we're going to move on over to Ironman. I just was going to say Redbud again, but again, I'm slow. Ironman. This track's interesting to me. I raced the Suzuki here, okay? And I really had a hard time on the Zook. I did switch back to the Yam for this lap just to see how I would do on the Yamaha, and I felt a lot better on the Yamaha. Again, same kind of thing where when you're going through the track, some of the ruts like tend to want to kick you out of them, or they're close together, and that could just be it's just more technical than I like to play, but I do really like it. I'm gonna give it an 8.3. And anyway, that's what I think, boys. So far, I'll put up a little thing here that shows all of the tracks and where I rank them. At the end of the day, all of these tracks are incredible, and I love them, and I think that you should buy them all because they're all W's. Anything critiques I have, that's just for the team for next year, but hands down the best outdoor tracks we have ever had in the game, and I think the team absolutely killed it. So I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace.